explaining the presentation. Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
Yep.
So we are recorded. So I something that I really and I'm gonna need your support of CAHP members. We try to present this in 15 minutes, but later what we will like is if you can share your knowledge with us, because that's what is it's really important to have everybody in this room. So I'm going to be explaining this. So we started this grant. It's a shared grant. So right now we are Melissa and Dana and also Taylor were our students for the first year. This is a grant for 5 years. The next, Melissa. So this the professors that we are here. Some of you know Mario Santana, that he probably has been working with you and has been your professor. He's an expert in recording, in digital documentation, and a lot about knowledge from ICOMOS and UNESCO. So he has that. We have that support, and also Federica Goffi, that was our former director, and also she has been a lot of research on the theoretically about adaptive reuse. So this is where we are. We could say as the main cluster. I am the chair, but also we have different partners, and CAHP is one of our partners. So we started with Chris Uchiyama last year talking about all these conversations. So I really appreciate that we have that support of CAHP. So if any of you wanna, not only because our CAHP members, but for your companies or other associations that you haven't want to join, that's absolutely fantastic. So we have right now all of this. So next one, so I'm going to talk a little bit specifically about the grant. So this grant is a 5-year partnership funded by SSHRC. And something that is very interesting is 14 Canadian universities are in this grant. There are 4 different research clusters, and the one that we are looking about adaptive reuse called Integrated Resilience, Material Culture, and Adaptive Reuse. So with this chart that Dana created, that I thought that was really interesting, is to highlight the 14 universities, the main topics, and which one can be related with adaptive reuse. So that's what we were looking at, and it's a very different scheme that a year ago, the PI from University of Montreal, Jean-Pierre Chopin, created, but Dana did it more in a deeper to see how really adaptive reuse can have a connection with everything. Like it's not only one little thing, so it's a lot. So we were looking like residential, industrial, how with indigenous people we can do this. So what's in a more big picture, and that's what we are making all those connections. So that's what is really important. Dana, if you want to mention something specifically to add in this, you can jump in. But so the main Dana, do you want to say something?
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think you said it. I think our main goal is to show that specifically Carleton's research has been sort of an umbrella topic that is able to encompass almost and connect all of the school's research. So I think that at Carleton specifically, in looking at adaptive reuse, we see it as something that bridges everyone's research together. Exactly.
And something that was really interesting, I don't know if Jeannie from Calgary is here in the call, but she was joining us as one of our partners representing CAHP. And I was speaking with her a lot in those 2 days. Calgary is like most of the 14 clusters, they were not talking about existing buildings. Almost everybody was looking about new construction. So that was for me like a no-brainer, but for them was. So that's what we want to make that change in the research. So that was something to highlight. So the next, this is more or less like the questions that we are looking. So the big thing about this grant is how to assess quality in the built environment. That's the main thing. So for us was, what is quality in adaptive reuse? So another thing that for CAHP was really interesting, and I spoke a lot with Chris, is how our adaptive reuse projects have been awarded and evaluated, and CAHP has a system. So we were looking how we can, this research could inform or modify or improve CAHP award, and also with the city of Ottawa, we have been talking about that, and and with other partners, Heritage Ottawa, like different partners, National Trust. And with Dana was one of the persons that the first year was researching which organism in Canada and elsewhere they are doing award, and those awards if they are on adaptive reuse. So that was, we haven't finished, but this is something that we have been researching. And another thing that we are looking specifically, and that's one of the, it's a short, but at the same time, it's a long term. We want to create an inventory of all the adaptive reuse buildings in Canada, and which are those trends, the typology. So that's why at the end you're going to see about the survey that we are doing, and your insight will be fantastic. We are also looking about type of scales of intervention, typology of conversions, ages of the buildings that have been adapted, which are the barriers, the drivers, and the benefits to reuse, specific about sustainability, what policies and incentives are directly or indirectly impact to reuse, and the synergies. So how can we provide socially, cultural, and environmental sustainable practices? So as we said, the first years, just we focused to say something in the adaptive reuse of office and commercial buildings. And then in the second, we are going to be looking sacred and industrial building, but it just decided the first because one of our partners, they say, well, we have a lot of office buildings, how we can start it. So, but we will continue in the next years, other typologies. Next, please. So a little bit about what we have done in the first year. We have in August a whole convention with the 14 universities. In December, we have an online, and in Calgary, we have the last one. So we have so far 3. And we also have 3 partner roundtables in July, in October, and in February. All those have been with CAHP members. And then we have, the idea is to have conversations with different experts like all of you. And also with the students, we established and we did some site visits. So this is some of the images during the conventions, formal and informal meetings. So next, I think that is Melissa.
Yeah, I'll be starting us off. Thank you so much, Mariana. So over the past year, our research team, we've basically been dedicated to exploring the multifaceted aspects of adaptive reuse, and with a specific focus on quality as it relates specifically to societal demands. So as society evolves, so do our needs and demands for spaces that cater to our ever-changing lifestyles. And adaptive reuse, specifically the repurposing and transformation of existing structures to meet new societal demands, has emerged as a powerful tool in this regard. So today we'll delve into the depths of adaptive reuse and explore this multifaceted concept of quality within the realm of adaptive reuse. So while undertaking this research, our team has collaborated with various partners and engaged in extensive consultations with representatives of diverse social groups. And through this collaborative effort, we've gained quite valuable insights and perspectives on the subject, and thoroughly enriching our understanding of the challenges and the opportunities associated with adaptive reuse. And in addition to our engagement with stakeholders, we've also delved into extensive literature reviews on adaptive reuse, with particular focus on the North American context, since this is sort of a growing trend that has risen within North America recently. And by studying these reviews, we've also uncovered some critical patterns and identified the best practices that continue and to contribute to the quality of adaptive reuse. So on the next slide. So before we delve further into our research, we think it'd be good to establish the definition of quality that we're using, which underpins our research. So we believe that the quality goes beyond mere regulatory compliance or aesthetic appeal, and really it encompasses the greater public good, which we expect from our buildings, addressing things such as human health, safety, well-being, and the numerous social, cultural, environmental, and economic concerns of our time. So from a social cultural perspective, adaptive reuse has the potential to improve our sense of place, belonging, and identity. It supports equity, diversity, inclusion, enhances safety, and preserves diverse histories, heritage, and cultures that shape our communities. And it can also revitalize neighborhoods and retains the unique character of our streets. From an economic standpoint, adaptive reuse offers a range of advantages. It also, for instance, allows faster market readiness, adds value through the preservation of character, and supports local trades and suppliers, specifically for the local economy. And it can also provide a more cost-effective solution in many cases, optimizing resources and maximizing return on investment. And lastly, the environmental benefits come hand in hand with the quality of adaptive reuse. So by repurposing existing structures, we reduce embodied carbon emissions, combat urban sprawl, decrease landfill waste, and mitigate air and noise pollution. So these environmental considerations align with our collective responsibility to safeguard the planet and create sustainable built environments. So our research on the quality of adaptive reuse aims to shed light on this transformative potential of repurposing existing spaces to meet these societal demands.
So we've also been looking into policies and incentives, trying to identify barriers which have impacted the likelihood or feasibility of adaptive reuse projects versus demolition or new construction. So while adaptive reuse has many possible synergies with goals relating to climate change or climate action, vacancy, and housing, the diagram here shows all of the discouraging relationships that many policies have with adaptive reuse, along with additional cultural, economic, and technical barriers. Of the barriers that have come up in discussions with developers and many others, the biggest challenge often comes back to too many restrictions and not enough incentives relating to existing or historic buildings to make that adaptive reuse economically feasible. And in addition to that, a lot of other common barriers are the lack of knowledge or experience in adaptive reuse outside of the conservation field, the lack of maintenance already for buildings that makes them less feasible for adaptive reuse, which raises the costs, additional challenges with building features, policies that just don't recognize the benefits or synergies with adaptive reuse, and many others. So I won't go through the whole diagram, but we'll share the PowerPoint later so that you can reference it. Yeah, Dana.
So our research team has also looked specifically at the office to residential conversions, more specifically since there's a rising vacancy in office buildings, which is a pattern that's seen in many large Canadian cities, including the US. So we feel that this is important sort of typologies to begin looking at. And it's also a good opportunity to address new community needs, such as housing, for example. So the US has capitalized on these vacancies with 41% of new apartments between 2020 and 2021 being converted from office buildings. Canada has been slower to do this with only 19 ongoing conversion projects identified so far. So hopefully this will change. But it is important to begin asking, for example, how do we ensure that these are done in a socially and environmentally respectful way? On the next slide. So this growing opportunity for office conversions doesn't just exist within the private sector. It's also very much experienced within the public sector, with 251 federal office buildings in Ottawa alone. Despite 24% being in poor to critical condition, with many underutilized or vacant, very few are declared surplus, adapted, or even marketable for adaptive reuse. So through this research, we're also calling on the federal government to take leadership in quality regarding adaptive reuse in Canada as a means to addressing our vacant building stock. Our research finds that this aligns with existing federal goals, yet it's still met with barriers from mandates and funding to the disposal process, as well as to the lack of knowledge from professionals and the public, as well as a lack of incentives or climate and social impact within the review process, which could ensure a higher quality project for the average building.
So our current case study methodology assesses the different stages of projects through a conservation-based approach, looking at understanding, planning, and intervening with additional phase of ongoing maintenance and looking at post-occupancy and construction. to really see how people experience the building and how it continues to maintain that quality to which it was designed. We're also looking at aspects of social, cultural, and environmental qualities, as well as financial barriers and incentives that may have impacted the building, and better understand what enables or inhibits adaptive reuse projects and all of their qualities. So this is just an example of one of our case studies from our templates. We were looking at this building in France, which is a recent conversion of an office building. In addition to these specific case studies that we're looking to delve more deeply into, we're also looking to create this inventory of adaptive reuse in Canada, which Mariana previously mentioned. And this is to better analyze the predominant typologies, scales, and quality of adaptive reuse across the country up to today. So while we're starting with Ottawa, we do hope to develop a much larger database over the course of the 5-year project. So we welcome submissions from anywhere in Canada and of all building typologies. So if you have any case studies you'd like to share, you can feel free to reach out to me by email or fill out one of our surveys, which I'll just quickly show and run you through. So it's just a quick survey. You don't have to share any of your personal information if you don't want to, only your email if you'd like to get in contact with us. But it's just 14 questions, very simple. You can share what you want. And if you don't have all the information, that's fine. Just the identification of the buildings helps in building our inventory.
Could you put that in the chat, Melissa?
Oh, yes.
That would be great. Thank you. Was that the last slide?
No.
No. One more.
Sorry. I'll just do it again. All right. So I think we have just a couple more.
So we just want to share quickly sort of what we're working on right now, and also the upcoming events that are happening with the grant. So currently we're definitely reaching out to more experts to gain unheard viewpoints. This includes developers, it also includes community groups, and really anyone within the heritage field or any of the society groups that we mentioned previously. We're also developing office conversion, an inventory of office conversion case studies. So if any of you would like to fill out the form that Melissa had just shown, that would be great, because we'd be able to add to that list. Even if they're not office conversion, any type of conversion will be included in the inventory. So that's sort of highlighted there within the third point of creating this inventory. We're beginning in Ottawa, but eventually the inventory will expand to all of Canada. So if there's any project that any of you are familiar with within all of Canada, you can enter that into the form, or as Melissa stated, send her an email, and that will help us add to the inventory, as it's definitely something that is not existing as of currently. And then in addition to these, we're also studying more awards for adaptive reuse. So any of you can also reach out to Melissa. Maybe Melissa, you can also put your email in the chat later. If any of you are aware of, we have an inventory also of adaptive reuse awards within Canada, but it's difficult to find every single one of them as they're all various scales. So if any of you have any information on adaptive reuse awards, if you would like to share that as well, that would be great. In regard to upcoming events, so the grant began in 2022, and Mariana shared sort of what we've done so far. Upcoming will be part of the As Found conference, which is an international colloquium on adaptive reuse. It's in Belgium, so this will be from a sort of European point of view. We will be presenting the Canadian perspective. It'll be a good opportunity for us to sort of bridge what is being done in Europe, which is seemingly more advanced than what's as of date occurring in Canada. So that'll be a good way to add to our research. And then in October, there's also the Adaptive Reuse Roundtable with the National Trust Conference in Ottawa. And then we also, Carleton is hosting a symposium on adaptive reuse, and that will be in October 2025.
So now we can go into our discussion period. If you have any questions up till now, do let us know. We can give a moment.
Oh, you've got specific discussion questions.
We do have some. We don't have to follow through all of them, but just to
Well,
prompt discussion and
I
get
guess,
things started.
well, before opening it up to discussion, I just wanted to thank all of you for this material. It's quite fabulous. It's very, very informative, but also very clear. And especially the graphics. I thought that was excellent. The barriers to building reuse is something that probably every municipality in Canada could learn a thing or two from. I'd like to start with a question, that's not here. I have quite a few questions, but there are a couple that I'd like to start with. First of all, how are you engaging communities, not just necessarily within our field, or what about outside the field? How are you bringing this information to, people beyond our expertise? Is it really internal at this point? Is that how?
So to be honest, I think that's one of the things that we founded in the Calgary, and we discussed it specifically with Taylor, is that most of our partners are heritage experts, and we needed to start opening for more inclusive. So one thing that we were proposing or suggesting is, like one of our partners is Athabasca University. So contact them because there is also online to see if they can specifically helping us, because one of the areas that we needed is to look at about indigenous. So how we can look at into to connect it, because that was what we saw in Calgary, is that everybody's looking about new building, but not about adaptive. So one of the starting point is with Athabasca University for both community and indigenous. We are also trying to connect with Canada Lands Corporation. We have been trying like a few months ago, like since October, but we haven't made that connection. And I really like what they are doing because they contact community. So that's the main two things, but like we know that is one of our missing point about community, how we are doing. Like in February, we realized that developers were not we were not speaking with developers. So then since February, we have been having conversations about how the vision of the developers, that they just look at about the economy and they don't care about the heritage aspect, to say something. So in the last March, April, and May, we have been talking with several developers. So that's one of the things. But now we need to continue. So any idea, please, by all means, happy to connecting. But yes,
okay. I did receive a question via the chat from one of our members out east, Elizabeth Cushing, and she's asking about engagement in the maritime regions, Maritime and Newfoundland, Labrador.
So, like right now, for another project that I'm doing with the climate change, I have been connecting and meeting several people, especially archaeologists and also policymakers in different parts of Nova Scotia. So I am thinking that those people that I have been contacting for the climate change aspect could be interesting to be inviting or helping with that side, because we don't have and that's what the idea about the inventory. We say yes, Ottawa, but at the same time with the students we have been talking, no, I don't want that we just focus in Ottawa. And that's what this opportunity with CAHP, that is Trans-Canada, we can have it. So definitely the person from, I don't remember the name that you said, from Maritimes, but yes, I would love to contact her and follow up for future ideas with whom I
They-
have to contact. Yeah.
We do have a chapter there, the Atlantic
Yes.
Association of Heritage Professionals, so she's involved there. My last control of the conversation, have you reached out to Lacaton and Vassal in France? Have you had any discussions with some well-known architects who are in the business of doing rehabilitations? Because
Not yet, but I think that the
I think that
opportunity.
would be, that might
Yes,
be quite
I think
wonderful.
the two ideas is that when Dana is going in September to Belgium, that is what we are thinking to open up for more people. And also I was in April when I was in Spain, I was trying to contact the people that they are doing adaptive reuse in Spain. What are their opportunities for that? So that is something, because definitely in Europe they are ahead of us in that type of adaptive reuse. So yes, I
Wow.
think that's the idea to.
If that invitation sends out, you can just add my name to the list. I'd enjoy talking to them. I'd like to open it up. I've sort of taken up some time here, but I know that we have quite a few members that have some very direct knowledge and implication on this topic. So, and also, as we said at the beginning of the conversation, that if you do have input for the team here, then this is appreciated on their side. So it's a back and forth. So if you do have questions, put up your hand, and please ask questions, because I know. Okay, we've got Amy. Well, look at that. You see, that's excellent, Amy.
Hello.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All
Perfect.
right. Nice to see you guys again. Some of you
Mhm.
familiar faces. I'll just weigh in with my little tiny bit of experience working with developers and doing very few adaptive reuse projects, more additions and alterations. But from my tiny experience in Ontario, I can tell you we often run into the challenge of educating the developer and or the client in terms of what it actually means and what it does mean. So there's a lot of uncertainty about the permitting process. There's quite a few extra steps for heritage that are involved with that. And also with that caveat tends to come the need for tradespeople to do specific things. So those are the two, I think, biggest barriers I have in trying to even have a meaningful discussion with developers, when it's in their eyes, it's easier just to go through the process of demolition and start from anew. And I hate to say it, but the trades is really like bold underlined. There are just a backlog of need for these particular tradespeople. And so the longer the time it's anticipated to take, the more money the developer lose. They do the calculations, and we often end up at, that kind of discussion, or just an abandonment of the project. The second one was about just take it for what it is. We have many times when we're trying to encourage adaptive reuse, we often have the municipality or someone say, well, can you show me an example of what a good one is? Like what can we look to use as our like guideline for what we're supposed to do here? Otherwise, they're just kind of going in blind, and they often ask us for that. And while we might have a vision in our head, we don't have very many concrete examples to show them, like here's a 2-story, church that's been adapted into this kind of conversion process. And so there's just a lack of example there. So we actually, I work for ARA. We worked with the University of Waterloo planning department last year for a student project about adaptive reuse. And they put together, I made a note here, so don't worry, I'll pass that information on when I can, because part of their exercise was to do a literature review and some background research, and then pull out some case studies of what they thought a good example of adaptive reuse was in historic buildings. And through that, they did put together a small Excel, which again, I have it written here. I need to just seek permission to share it with you. I don't see why it wouldn't be, but in Kingston, Ottawa, Toronto, Hamilton, and Waterloo area. So not an exhaustive list, but I will say, just as a caveat, I think some of them pulled from online permitting process to figure out which buildings had been altered. So now that's altered, not necessarily adaptively reused, but it might be something to consider when you're trying to figure out, how do I get this information? How do I find out, which building has actually been converted? And then I have a note here. I have a few smaller projects, churches that have been turned into apartment buildings and things like that with success that I can share with you.
Well, that's great.
That
Amy.
are public document. So
That's
anyways,
great.
nice to see some nice faces there.
Do you guys want to comment on that?
Thank
Because we also have
you.
a question from Ahmad also.
Just quickly to say, I mean, I think that I really hope that ERA will share that, because ERA is one of our partners. So that will be fantastic if they can help us with that. That will be, hopefully they approve it to have it. But I really like all the comments that you mentioned, and that's what I think, that part of this is about the best practices, because we want to have it like here and elsewhere to see what they are doing and how they are solving issues and how we can learn from those. So yes, for like you or anybody has examples, that would be fantastic. Thank you, please.
Yeah, it was from the University of Waterloo who we did it with. So I must say there are often many large graduate classes that are looking for year-long projects to work on. So possible resource to tap in terms of synergy of what they're trying to learn and what you're trying to achieve in terms of inventory and things like that. Because man, if I had an inventory of all these buildings at my disposal to use, I can't even tell you. It would be amazing.
Thanks, Amy. Ahmad, I think you had a question. Raise your hand up.
Yes, I do. So thank you for the team. I think putting together like an inventory of all adaptive reuse cases would give us a lot of help and tools in our own education towards clients. I agree with Amy, like most of the jobs we have to do, we have to like take a step, not a step back, but like pause on advancing the work and like educating them and telling them that it's, reusing is best. But I'm not sure in your study how much emphasis you're putting on the inventory versus how much emphasis you're going to be putting on dissecting and analyzing the challenges towards adaptive reuse. But I think it may, I mean, that's up to you, not up to me, but I think like dissecting what makes it difficult and finding solutions to that could be also helpful for kind of the industry, if that's gonna help like counterbalance some of the typical things we hear from the other side, because sometimes they tell us costs and we're like, oh, okay, we can't solve that. So, but I mean, one of the tools I think that has been launched like this year is the CARE tool, which we're having, I think, a workroom next week actually. That's going to help like kind of an intuitive tool to help determine the cost benefit scenario of like the energy use versus materials that are wasted, etc. So all this is kind of in a easy to use tools for architects and I guess also owners. So we're going to kind of dissect that or learn about that a little bit next week. But another challenge about I think about that is probably not discussed here, but if you're having a building type that's a certain size, a certain height, and it needs to be replaced by another building of the same type, then adaptive reuse kind of makes sense to justify, because it's the GFA hasn't really changed. But a big issue we're having, at least in Toronto, is that sometimes they're proposing like a 30, 40, 50-story tower. So adaptive reuse of an existing building is much more challenging because sometimes the zoning is proposed to be very different. So unless there's a plot of land next to the existing building where you can build the new building, oftentimes that doesn't really happen unless we tell owners to look at buying more land, save the existing building, and like build on a vacant lot. But that's really site specific. So I'm not sure how much that's probably a question like for you to check. what's the emphasis you're putting towards that inventory versus the emphasis on dissecting the challenges and finding like solution paths to that, because that could be also helpful for, I think, the industry.
I can answer with that. Like in the survey, one of the things that we ask is one of the questions is which are the challenges and which, like, if you have any strategy. So we already added that as one of the questions to start dissecting that. So yes, so it's both to have an inventory, but also like how the expert has been solved. And I know that case by case, but at least they start giving us a kind of a baseline how they did it in Hamilton or in another place. So that's the idea. Yeah, and I think that also this survey could be interesting, and I'm thinking that could be something interesting to do it when Dana will be in Europe, if she can show it there, so that in Europe they will start giving us some of those. They will answer, so we have more cases. Yeah, thank you, Emma.
Thanks, Mariana.
Were there other questions coming in? I know that there's good, Austin, that would be nice.
Hi guys, thank you for this presentation. It was very interesting. Very quick question. Is there a difference in your definition between an existing building and adaptive reuse of a building? In other words, are you just looking at a subset of existing buildings that as part of this study, or are you looking at all existing buildings and looking at that in relation to whether or not to tear them down and build new? That's a question.
Yeah, like and we also discussed that like in one moment we started just to including buildings that they were in one moment designated to have like the heritage designation. But speaking with the partners and with the students, we said no, we want to include it existing buildings, because if we just look at about the ones that are designated, we will make it too narrow. So we leave it open to have the existing and the heritage. And one of the questions in the survey, and that's something that will be really good when you will do it, if you think that there is another question that will be interesting to add or to clarify certain things like you, please let us know. But one of the things is that we are asking if the building has any heritage characteristics or values or something like that, we put it, if being a heritage designated, will that was a positive or a negative aspect for the building? So we want to hear about that. So we said that for now we have been open to have the existing and the any existing building, even if it's designated or not. We want to look at into both.
Thank you for that. Just a clarification. I mean, I'm thinking about adaptive reuse being the existing building that, as you said, was an office and now is a residence. But what if a developer had an existing office and wanted to renovate it to another standard, but still an office? Is that part of your study as well?
I think that we were looking just if they change the use, but probably okay. We should. Because one of the things that we were looking, but you are true, Austin, is something that we should think about it. If they just rehabilitated or they kept the same use, but they updated the building. That's true. That probably we should in that inventory we could create another column or something like that. That if it's what you were suggesting, like they just made an updated.
That's what Ahmad was getting at with the CARE tool. I mean, they don't differentiate you change in use. They just compare new to old or new to existing. So to stay in line with some of what the other folks out there are thinking about.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's something that we should clarify. Thank you, or to add.
That's great, Austin. I have a question from Vanessa, who isn't being, virtually antisocial. She just doesn't have a camera.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Vanessa. So,
okay.
So
Thanks. Yeah,
Everyone's
sorry.
listening.
Thank you so much. I have a few thoughts here, especially since you're going to be traveling to Europe soon to look at those examples. And I find that in my experience working with adaptive reuse projects right now, there's so much difficulty in trying to add density to sites, and there's a lot of creativity that is needed, and so many professionals need to work together in order to, the amount of invisible work that goes into these projects is just astounding. And I think that we as heritage planners need to start questioning ourselves as whether or not we're kind of setting ourselves up for failure. And one of the reasons I say that is because I think that the perceptions of change and alteration to heritage buildings is different in Europe than it is here. So how are we approaching the culture of conservation here in Canada? How is it different there? And our assessment of adverse impacts, as all of us heritage planners know it, how are these adverse impacts that we identify really changing and framing our way of approaching these reuse projects? So what does the European examples look like in terms of how their guidance is? Because right here we're relying on things like the Ontario Heritage Toolkit, which is a little outdated, as well as the Parks Canada standards and guidelines. So my question is, I would hope that when you are traveling Europe, I'm really interested in how European perspectives on change are so different, and whether or not we need to start understanding how change perspectives are different here, because I see that there are so many adaptive reuse projects, and people in general, it doesn't matter what background they come from, are just so, it is sometimes really quite negative in terms of how they are seeing a heritage building and adding density. And I feel that's just an archaic approach to heritage conservation now. I think we need to start understanding that density and heritage, it doesn't have to be scary, but it does include a lot of work. So sorry, that was a long drawn out comment, but I'm really hoping to see something there in this study, because I see so much value in it. And thanks so much, everybody.
No, Vanessa, I think that I agree with you. I think that, and I think that I join with Amy first thing about education. And I think that is even in, and I'm a professor, so, but I was training in Spain. So I have like two things, but in the school here in Canada, the heritage, the adaptive reuse, the existing, in the school, they don't see it as important, unfortunately. And I said, like, that's a discussion that I have every day here in my school, in my university. And if you look at the programs, there's very minimal about heritage that there was taught in the school, even in the engineers, and Taylor can say it. They teach them how to calculate just about new buildings, not about existing structures. So that's a big issue. And in Europe, you don't have that. Like I was just speaking last month, and they said, no, all the projects in Europe right now in architectures are about adaptive reuse, about existing. Of course, there is, I think that the environmental issues and the sustainability is making a change happen quickly here in Canada. So I think that's my hope. So that's what I think that this could be interesting. But also it's like all the other clusters right now for this research, they are not looking about existing buildings. They all are looking about new buildings. So we have to educate it, unfortunately. But we have to, as you say, the densities, we should find strategies how to say that the density is not a barrier for heritage. I think that that bridge should be really, really interesting to look at the case study. So if anybody has it, and if not, we have to look at we have to find those. I don't know if any of the students wants to add anything about this for the cases that you have been looking in Ottawa.
No, is that a silence of no? Okay. No one else is. I'm thinking at this point, maybe one more question or statement. Is that before we wrap up here? I know that Jeannie was at the Calgary workshop, I believe, and I saw Chris Weeb was at it. I don't know. Your next one is a virtual one, correct? Is that, oh, Jeannie would like to speak? Okay, Jeannie.
Yeah, I want to say I was just listening because I had
Yes.
contributed at the convention, and I know I probably will along the way still, having made the connection. So yeah, it was really great, Mariana and Melissa and Dana to see you. Yeah, the graphics were fabulous, and to pull together some of the thinking and to hear what you guys are moving forward with of the developers and things like that, and what you're going forward with. So no, I think it's a fabulous project. I'm happy that CAHP has partnered with the Carleton one, you know, especially for our heritage profession. And I look forward to, I think that there'll be lots over the next even number of years, like this workroom as a start one, but I think there'll be things we can learn from the work you're doing and contribute, right? And as you're reaching out to other partners too. It was nice to see the survey up because I have lots here in Calgary that I can add to it now that you have the survey. I know we talked about that across the country. So I'll take some time, and yeah, just hopefully we can maybe, and Andrew, you may have some thoughts after this about, I don't know if that survey we might want to get to our members across the country. I mean, I can cover Calgary or
that's an excellent idea.
But I think that, you know, whether there's places and niches we may not be aware of, but our membership may be, you know, in BC and Saskatchewan too, you know, even though we don't have lots of members, but I still think it's an opportunity. So I think, because I'd be really excited if it's a part of your work, even, and then you could take from it that we had a really cross Canada, because like you said, I don't know that it's been done yet. Kind of an inventory of us understanding what's been done. Places, people are doing it in different places, in different cities and at different levels, different types of buildings. But I don't think we've really gotten a bit of that. And I know it's not a part necessarily of what in the end will be a result, but I think that it still will be of value through your process to help answer some of the questions. So
that's wonderful, Jeannie. Thank you. I think thank you to everyone for coming on the call. I really appreciate it. I certainly have my own, I do a lecture at one point on rehabilitation. I personally think the word adaptive reuse is actually redundant. I don't use adaptive reuse very often. I try to encourage rehabilitation as you don't adapt and reuse. They're redundant words, but that's my that's my opinion of things. But for these rehabilitations, which have been going on for thousands of years anyway, I think this is a conversation it's just so topical right now. So I'm really pleased that all of you came on the call. I want Melissa to stop share her screen, or maybe I can do that. Can I do that? And I'd like to, just before we leave the call, and Matt actually, he actually referenced this, but we do have, in conjunction with the National Trust, our next presentation, which will be on the CARE tool. And this is with Aaron McDade from Architecture 2030, Laurie Ferris from Goody Clancy. You're probably all familiar with them. But the CARE tool is something that we're going to be exploring. I think it's on May 31st. So that is next week. So I am packing the schedule full of all sorts of opportunities for you guys. In the meantime, I think if we just make sure that you have access to the survey, which I think Melissa, you put in the chat, and their emails are there. And I think, Elizabeth has said something. Yeah, okay. This may also be adjourned. So maybe I have recorded this, and this will be on a private channel, YouTube channel, where you can always come back and look at it. Again, thank you to Professor Mariana Esponda, Always wonderful to see presentations from your classes. Thank you to Melissa, Dana, Taylor, thank you, but I know you're behind the scenes working away on this too. So, and thank you to all of you for doing this. I'll give you back 1 minute of your day to have lunch, but again, keep checking in, because we're going to have more of these, more discussions around these topics, and I think it would be useful for everyone to participate.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll do a bye-bye. Okay.